Shabbat Shalom. So I was very happy to hear Rabbi Fort about a week ago admit that she has a similar literary disability to me. We're both poetry challenged. So it was good to know that I'm not alone in that. Fortunately, I guess a little bit, when I went to rabbinical school, I had some teachers who helped me through this, get me over my fears a little bit, helped me give me some tools to help understand things, because a lot of our liturgy is, after all, poems. And so you have to if you want to understand what they're saying, you have to take them apart. And the earliest book of prayers of the Jewish people is the book of Psalms. It's 150 prayer poems, 150 chapters. And we recite one of them, Psalm 27, at this time of year, and I thought it would be a neat idea to look at it. So even if you're poetry challenged, kind of bear with me here. I think I'm gonna help to pull you through this. So if you open your book to page 59, we normally read this in the evening and the morning. It wasn't on the schedule for this evening, so we're gonna read it now. And as we read it, I want you to think about, so the two things that usually scholars ask about Psalms is, what motivated this person to write this? What life event gave rise to this creative person to sit down with a pen and piece of pottery and write out this dramatic piece? What was it in their life that was going on that made them want to write this thing? And then the second question they ask is, what was it used for, usually in biblical times in the temple? What was its purpose? The second question we're going to not look at tonight. Instead, we're going to ask, why are we reading it this time of year now? That we will look at. And the other thing I want you to think about as we read this is, when the Psalms talk about enemies, evil people, bad guys all ganging up on me, as you're going to see in the Psalm, it doesn't have to be real people. It's poetry. It's metaphors, right? So it can mean all kinds of things. It can mean an illness, maybe a serious illness, again, like an enemy. Your enemy is the illness in your body. Or maybe it's the illness in a friend. Or maybe it's something going wrong at work, a coworker that's giving you trouble, or some other situation there, or maybe financial problems, or an addiction of some kind, perhaps. So all kinds of things could be your enemy that you're having to confront, right? So as we read this, you can think about it sort of that way. So now we're going to read this, Psalm 59, a Psalm of David. Adonai is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? Adonai is the stronghold of my life. Whom should I dread? When evil people assail me to devour my flesh, my enemies and those who besiege me, it is they who stumble and fall. Should an armed camp be arrayed against me, my heart would show no fear. If they were to go to war against me, of this I would be sure. One thing I ask of Adonai, this is what I seek, to dwell in the house of God all the days of my life, to behold God's peacefulness and to pray in God's sanctuary. In a time of calamity, you would hide me in your sukkah. Not exactly a stronghold, by the way. Sukkahs aren't usually, think about that for a second. Enfold me in the secret recesses of your tent. You raised me up to a stronghold. Now my head is raised high above my enemies round about. And I come with offerings amidst trumpet blasts to God's tent, chanting and singing praise to Adonai. And now the tone of this psalm is going to dramatically change, just giving you a little hint. Adonai, hear my voice as I cry out. Be gracious to me and answer me. It is you whom my heart seeks. Seek my face. It is your presence I seek, Adonai. Do not hide your face from me. Do not act with anger toward me. You've always been my help. Don't forsake me. Don't abandon me, my God, my deliverer. Though my father and my mother abandoned me, Adonai, gather me in. Show me your way, Adonai, and lead me on a straight path, despite those arrayed against me. Don't hand me over to those who besiege me, for false witnesses who breathe hatred have risen against me. If only I could trust that I would see God's goodness in the land of the living. ... Place your hope in Adonai, be strong and take courage. Place your hope in Adonai. Wow, what a dramatic poem this is. So the first thing I pointed out already is that it seems to be two very different poems smashed together. In the first half of the poem, he's really confident. God's going to hide me. He's going to take care of me. I'm in his sheltering presence. Maybe it's a sukkah, but maybe it's a stronghold. But nevertheless, my enemies run away. They're all terrified. And then the second half, it's like, God, you're abandoning me. Don't run away. Don't hide your face. Protect me. Save me. My parents aren't even here to protect me. It's you. I need you. So it seems like two very different poems that got stuck together. But modern scholars, when they see this kind of thing, they don't assume that it was written two separate pieces that somebody later stitched together and said, let's make them one, because who would have done that? So it's probably one guy who wrote both pieces. So this is another example of what I like to say Judaism does all the time. We take opposites and we put them together and we say, think about this. You know, the matzah is the bread of affliction, we say. The bread our ancestors ate as slaves in Egypt. But then all of a sudden, it's the bread that we ate when we were free, because the dough didn't have time to rise. So it's both the bread of affliction and the bread of freedom, right? Avinu Malkeinu is a prayer about God who is our parent and loves us and cares us, nurtures us. Avinu, my father. Malkeinu, the king, who's commanding and demanding and aloof and removed, right? And the prayer says, think about God as both at the same time. Right, we do this all the time in Judaism. We eat apples and honey on Rosh Hashanah to make a sweet new year while we read about Unatan HaTokef and how we might die. It's just interesting. We love to do this in Judaism, and so this poem does the same thing, and that is part of life. Life is both full of confidence and despair at times, and they both are represented in this one psalm. How did we end up getting to read this on the holidays? So there's an ancient midrash that says that it was about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it says this, Adonai Uri, God is my light on Rosh Hashanah, because it's the light of truth and justice, right? That's what Rosh Hashanah is, the day of judgment. V'ishi, he is also the God of my salvation. When? On Yom Kippur, when I need desperately to be saved from myself, right? So it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the opening line. And then, as we noted, he hides me in his sukkah. So we're going to say this from time of Rosh Hashanah all the way through Sukkot, which is going to be Sunday. We say it through Sunday, the end of Sukkot. And then at the bottom, the last line, see the second line from the bottom, the first word is lule, which means if only. But there's little dots over it in the way scribes write it in the book, the little dots over it. And that means there's something weird about that word. And so the rabbi said, if you look at the word lule and you spell it backwards, it's Elul. Oh, good. So we get to say the psalm all during the month of Elul, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, and then through Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot. And that is one of the reasons why we do this. By the way, we've only been reciting this psalm for this time period since the middle 1700s. So a little before the American Revolution, kind of new, that's modern innovation in Judaism. And about the time of the American Revolution, we decided we'd start saying the psalm at this time of year. Anyway, that's the traditional reason given for why we read it now. But there's a more simple answer. It's talking about the feelings we might have as we approach God on Rosh Hashanah, right? We're confident, we're here together, praying together in God's holy sanctuary, and yet we know we've done some things that are not so great, and we're hoping that God will continue to be with us despite everything that's gone on. Right? So it kind of expresses that anxiety that we have during this time of day, or time of year. Well, Rabbi Golinkin, one of my teachers, suggested, he asked a question on one particular verse, which will lead to one last thing I want to leave you with. And that is, he says, I want to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Is that really a good idea? You know, it's like, I want to sleep and I want to stay in bed forever. Right? I want to just be comforted and not have to think about anything. Is that really living? Is that living a full life? And he says, that's really not what the Judaism demands of us, right? Im ein kemach ein Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. You have to earn a living. You have to go out in the real world, work with people. You can't dwell in the sanctuary 24 hours a day. That's not really life. Get a job, get work, go out and do stuff. So then, Rabbi Golinkin suggests, maybe this is what the psalmist meant. If we live our lives in a holy way, if we follow God's commandments, and we're kind to people, and we're nice to people, and we're fair and honest in our business dealings, and we create a holy community that looks after each other, then everywhere we go, we're in God's presence. When you help somebody and they smile back at you, you see God's face in their smile. You're in God's presence. When you take care of people, when we nurture each other, when we act together as a community to help heal the problems in society, we're doing God's work. We're bringing God's presence into the world. That's how you make God's presence in your world every minute of your life. Not by sitting in your bedroom and sleeping all day, but by going out and making it happen in the real world. And so I'd like to suggest, I would just like to add on to what Lincoln said, that maybe that's, after all, what the psalmist was trying to tell us in the last words. Be strong and take courage and place hope in Adonai. Yeah, we see injustice in the world. Where is God? Why is God hiding his face? Why does evil seem to triumph? The answer? We can create God's house ourselves everywhere we go. If we continue to do good deeds, if we continue to study God's wisdom, if we continue to bring God's holiness into our everyday life, that's how God will eventually triumph in this world. That's how God's face will be seen again. We can see God's face in the smile of that person I helped, in the face of your children when you teach them. And above all, don't despair. Have faith. Be strong and resolute and have faith. That's a message that's important for the holidays. As we finish up the holidays with Sukkot, and for the year ahead, we should gather our strength and our courage to fight the good fight, and in our little corner of the world, we will make God's presence known, and it will be God's sanctuary. Shabbat Shalom.